The Void Swarm was dead, not defeated, not driven away, but completely extinct. Major Yu Jin stood in what had once been the capital city of New Kepler, watching human soldiers methodically burn every piece of swarm biotechnology they could find. Nothing would be left to chance. "Sir, we've completed the sterilization of sectors 7 through 12, reported Sergeant Minho. No organic material larger than a single cell remains intact. Yu Jin nodded, checking her tablet for the complete list. Every swarm fragment, every converted organism, every piece of technology that the creatures had touched was being destroyed with fusion fire. It was brutal, thorough, and absolutely necessary. Admiral Taman's shuttle landed nearby, carrying the last coalition survivors. As he stepped out, he saw the human soldiers working with the same cold efficiency they had shown throughout the battle. There was no celebration, no sense of victory. This was just another job completed. "Major Yu Jin, I wanted to thank you for what you've done," Taman began. "You've saved our entire galaxy." Yu Jin looked at him with the same emotionless expression that all humans seem to wear. "We didn't save your galaxy, Admiral. We prevented the swarm from spreading to the next one." The distinction hit Taman like a physical blow. These humans hadn't come here to be heroes. They had come here to solve a problem, and they had solved it in the most efficient way possible. Captain Hansol approached, his uniform still bearing the scorch marks from the battle. "Admiral, we'll be departing in 18 hours. Our work here is finished." "Departing?" Taman couldn't hide his shock. "But we need your help to rebuild. Our worlds are destroyed, our fleets are gone, our people are traumatized. Surely you can stay and help us recover." "That's not our job," Hansol replied. "We eliminate extinction-level threats. What happens after that is not our concern." Communications Officer Da-Yun joined the conversation, carrying a datapad filled with reports. "Sir, we've identified 37 other systems showing similar energy patterns. Command wants us to investigate." Hansol nodded. "Inform the fleet. We depart on schedule." Taman felt desperation rising in his chest. "You can't just leave. We need to learn from you. We need to understand how to fight these kinds of threats." "No, you don't," said a new voice. Dr. Yunji approached carrying her medical equipment. "You want to stay the way you are. Peaceful, civilized, merciful. That's good. The galaxy needs civilizations like yours. But what if something like this happens again?" Dr. Yunji looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Then you call us again. That's what we're for." Commander Wu Jin, the Coalition's cultural analyst, had been studying the humans throughout their stay. Now he approached Hansol with a question that had been bothering him for days. "Captain, I've been analyzing your history files. How did humanity become like this? What turned you into such efficient killers?" Hansol was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars where his fleet waited. "We didn't choose this, Commander. It chose us. 3,000 years ago, we were probably a lot like your people. Then the first extinction event found us." He gestured toward the scarred landscape around them. "We tried being merciful. We tried negotiating. We tried finding peaceful solutions. And we watched our colonies burn while we debated ethics and morality." Communications Officer So Young from the Coalition had joined the group. "What changed?" "We learned that sometimes to preserve life you have to become very good at ending it." Hansol's voice carried the weight of millennia. "After the fourth galactic threat nearly wiped us out because we hesitated to use lethal force, we made a choice. We decided that our survival, and the survival of life in the universe, was more important than our moral comfort." Dr. Yunji added her own perspective. "Every gentle impulse, every merciful thought, every hesitation has been systematically trained out of us over centuries of warfare. We are what your species might become, given enough time and enough wars." Specialist Jae Sung approached with the final technical reports. "Sir, all swarm technology has been destroyed. We've confirmed complete extinction across 47 star systems. The threat no longer exists." As the human fleet prepared to leave, Admiral Taman made one last desperate attempt to understand these strange saviors. "Captain Hansol, will we ever see you again?" "Probably not," Hansol replied. "We operate in the spaces between galaxies, hunting threats before they can establish themselves. If we do our job correctly, you'll never need to see us again." He paused, looking at the Coalition survivors with something that might have been regret. "Admiral, your people will rebuild. You'll create new art, new literature, new ways of seeing the universe. You'll fall in love, raise children, and dream of better futures. That's what makes you worth saving. And what about you? We'll go back to the dark between stars and wait for the next threat. Because there's always a next threat. As the human ships prepared to depart, they left behind more than just a saved galaxy. They left behind classified reports that would be hidden in Coalition archives, deemed too disturbing for the general population. The truth about humanity was simple and terrifying. They were what happened when a species survived too many extinction events. They were the antibody that the universe had developed to fight galactic-scale infections. Captain Han Solo's final message to the Coalition was broadcast from the bridge of the Endurance as the human fleet prepared to jump to their next destination. Coalition forces, your galaxy is secure. The Void Swarm has been completely eliminated. We recommend that you establish early warning systems and maintain a standing military force. But the immediate threat is over. He paused, and for just a moment, his cold demeanor cracked slightly. You called for allies, but allies would have tried to save everyone. We're not your allies. We're your immune system. We do what needs to be done so you don't have to become what we are. The human fleet vanished into jump space, leaving behind a galaxy that was safe, grateful, and deeply disturbed by what salvation actually looked like. Admiral Taemin stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Coalition headquarters, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity continued its endless patrol, hunting threats that most civilizations couldn't imagine. They were the guardians that nobody wanted, but everybody needed. In the years that followed, when Coalition children learned about the Great War against the Void Swarm, they were told sanitized stories of brave allies who came to their aid. The truth remained classified, known only to a few senior officials who understood that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who are willing to become monsters so others don't have to. And in the deep monitoring stations, when sensors detected something that shouldn't exist stirring in the galactic rim, the operators knew exactly what to do. They sent a simple message toward the Terra system. We have a problem. Because somewhere in the dark, humanity was always listening, always ready, always willing to pay the price that others could not. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Admiral Taemin finally understood what he was witnessing. This wasn't warfare as the Coalition understood it. This was systematic extermination, conducted with the efficiency of a machine and the ruthlessness of a predator. Dr. Yoon-ji, the human fleet's chief medical officer, had established a field hospital in the Endurance's cargo bay. Coalition survivors who had been brought aboard for treatment watched in horror as she performed triage unlike anything they had ever seen. This one can still fight, she said, injecting a wounded Coalition pilot with something that made his broken arm stop bleeding, and his eyes burn with artificial alertness. He goes back to his ship in 20 minutes. A Nexari engineer with severe injuries was pushed aside. This one needs 3 days to heal properly. No combat value. He waits. Commander Wu Jin, the Coalition's cultural analyst, tried to protest. Doctor, that's not how medical ethics work. You treat the most severely injured first, regardless of their ability to fight. Dr. Yoon-ji looked at him with the same cold expression that all humans seem to wear. Your medical ethics are why you're losing this war. Every minute I spend saving someone who can't contribute to the fight is a minute the swarm has to adapt and grow stronger. She gestured toward the viewing screen, where human and swarm ships were locked in brutal combat. See that human destroyer out there? The Retribution? It's been destroyed and rebuilt 47 times in the last 300 years. The crew members I'm treating have died and been revived more times than you have fingers. The Coalition officers stared at her in disbelief. That's impossible, Wu Jin said. No, that's necessity. Dr. Yoon-ji returned to her work, using medical techniques that seemed more like field repairs than healing. When you've fought 17 galactic extinction events, you learn that individual lives matter less than total victory. We save the ones who can continue fighting. The rest wait. On the surface of New Kepler, General Sang-woo was leading the ground assault against swarm forces that had infected the planet's population. Coalition Captain Dong-hyun had requested permission to join the operation, hoping to rescue any survivors who might be hiding in the underground shelters. What he found instead was a methodical cleansing operation that left no room for hope or mercy. General, there's a shelter complex ahead, Dong-hyun reported. Our sensors show life signs inside. They could be survivors. General Sang-woo didn't even slow down. They're infected or they're conversion material. Either way, they're a threat. Human soldiers advanced through the shelter complex with weapons that seemed designed to ensure nothing could survive their passage. Corporal Yu led a squad that moved like hunters, checking every corner and leaving nothing alive behind them. "Sir, we found Coalition civilians," she reported over the communication system. 37 individuals in the main shelter. They appear uninfected. Dong-hyun felt relief flood through him. Finally, they were saving people. Then he heard General Sang-woo's response. "Are they showing any signs of swarm contact? Any behavioral changes? Any physical modifications?" "Negative, sir. They appear completely normal. The swarm's incubation period is 72 hours. These civilians have been here for 4 days. If they're still normal, they're bait." The next sound Dong-hyun heard was the distinctive whine of human energy weapons charging up. "General, you can't just execute civilians," he shouted into his communicator. "They're not civilians anymore," came the cold reply. "They're swarm assets waiting to activate. We learned this lesson on Kepler 442 when we tried to save the population centers. Every person we evacuated turned into a new infection source within a week." Dong-hyun listened in horror as the weapons fired and 37 life signs disappeared from his scanner. When he tried to protest, Corporal Yuri's voice came through his communicator. "Captain, I know this looks wrong to you, but 3 years ago I watched the swarm use children as weapons on the colony World Harmony. They let us see the kids, let us think we were rescuing them. When we brought them aboard our ships, they activated and killed 300 people." Her voice carried a weariness that spoke of too many similar decisions. "We don't make exceptions anymore because exceptions get people killed." Back in space, the battle was reaching its climax. The Void Swarm had thrown everything it had at the human fleet, but nothing seemed to work. Every adaptation the Swarm made, every new weapon it developed, the humans had an answer for. Specialist Jae Sung from the engineering department was monitoring the Swarm's adaptation patterns from his station on the Endurance. What he found confirmed humanity's worst fears and greatest advantage. "Sir, the Swarm is trying to adapt to our weapons, but it's failing," he reported to Captain Hansol. "It's never encountered anything like our technology before." "Why is that significant?" "Because our weapons aren't designed to be elegant or efficient, sir. They're designed to kill things that refuse to die. The Swarm keeps trying to evolve defenses against sophisticated energy weapons or exotic matter devices. It has no defense against being hit by a chunk of metal moving at 30% of light speed." Through the tactical display, they could see the proof of Jae Sung's analysis. Swarm ships that could absorb energy attacks and regenerate from molecular-level damage were being destroyed by simple kinetic weapons that human engineers had perfected over millennia of warfare. Major Yu Jin, commanding the human assault forces, provided the final piece of the puzzle. The Swarm isn't adapting because it's never fought anything like us before. Every other civilization it encountered tried to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure. We do the opposite. She gestured toward the planetary surface where fusion explosions were sterilizing entire continents. Other civilizations fight to save their worlds. We fight to make sure our enemies die completely. The Swarm doesn't know how to respond to opponents who are willing to destroy everything to achieve victory. As the last Swarm vessels fell silent, Admiral Tae-min realized that his galaxy had been saved. But the cost of salvation was higher than anyone had imagined. The Coalition's beautiful worlds were gone, their peaceful civilizations traumatized, and their understanding of warfare forever changed. Captain Hansol's final transmission to the Coalition forces was brief and without emotion. Threat neutralized. All Swarm organisms in this system have been eliminated. We will remain for 72 hours to ensure complete eradication, then depart. "Wait," Taemin called out. "What about rebuilding? What about helping us recover?" "That's not our job," Hansol replied. "Our job was to eliminate the extinction-level threat. That mission is complete." The human fleet began preparing for departure, leaving behind a galaxy that was safe, grateful, and forever changed by its encounter with humanity's version of salvation. Admiral Taemin couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screens. The human fleet had arrived, but these weren't the gleaming ships of liberation he had imagined. Dark, scarred vessels emerged from jump space like predators rising from the depths of an ocean. "Sir, I'm counting 47 ships," reported So Young, her voice filled with confusion. "But these don't look like any civilization we've encountered. These ships look like they've been through a war zone." The Coalition's remaining forces had been reduced to 9 vessels. hiding behind New Kepler's moon while the void swarm consumed the planet's surface. They had lasted 2 weeks longer than anyone expected, but it was only a matter of hours before the swarm found them. "Are they responding to our communications?" Taemin asked. Communications Officer Hee-jin shook her head. "Nothing, sir. They're scanning us, but they haven't acknowledged our hails." Through the viewing screen, Taemin watched as the human ships moved into formation. Their movements were precise, military, and somehow threatening. These vessels didn't move like explorers or diplomats. They moved like hunters. Finally, a transmission came through. The voice was calm, cold, and completely without emotion. "Coalition forces, this is Captain Hansol of the human vessel Endurance. We received your distress call. Maintain your current position and do not interfere with our operations." Taemin felt his hopes rising. "Captain Hansol, this is Admiral Taemin. Thank you for coming. We need immediate assistance with civilian evacuations and—" "Negative." The human's voice cut him off. "We are not here to provide humanitarian assistance. We are here to eliminate the threat. All coalition vessels will remain at current coordinates until the operation is complete." The communication ended abruptly. Taemin stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what he had just heard. Did he just say they're not here to help us? Before anyone could answer, the human fleet opened fire on the void swarm. What Taemin witnessed next changed everything he thought he knew about space warfare. The humans didn't use elegant energy beams or sophisticated missile systems. They used crude, brutal weapons that seemed designed for one purpose: destroying everything in their path. Massive kinetic rounds punched through swarm vessels like they were made of paper. High-explosive warheads detonated inside enemy formations, creating chain reactions that consumed dozens of swarm ships at once. And when conventional weapons weren't enough, the humans did something that made Taemin's blood run cold. They rammed their ships directly into swarm formations. "Sir, the human destroyer Vengeance just collided with a swarm hive ship," So Young reported, her voice filled with shock. "The impact destroyed both vessels, but, sir, the Vengeance is still fighting." Through the tactical display, Taemin could see the impossible sight of a human ship with half its hull missing, continuing to fire weapons from what remained of its structure. The crew was still alive in there, still fighting, even as their ship died around them. A new communication channel opened, and Captain Hansol's image appeared on screen. Behind him, Taemin could see a bridge filled with smoke and sparks, but the human looked completely calm. "Admiral Taemin, we are sending boarding parties to your vessels. You will provide them with complete tactical data about the swarm, and grant them access to your weapon systems." "Boarding parties? Captain, we're allies. You don't need to—" "We are not allies," Hansol interrupted. "We are exterminators. Your cooperation will make this process more efficient, but it is not required." The transmission ended, and moments later small human shuttles began docking with coalition ships. The first boarding party to reach the flagship was led by a woman named Commander Ji-won, whose armor bore the scars of countless battles. "I need your tactical data. All of it," she said without any greeting or introduction. "Enemy movement patterns, adaptation rates, reproductive cycles. Everything you've observed." Taemin tried to maintain some semblance of diplomatic protocol. "Commander, we're grateful for your assistance, but perhaps we should coordinate our strategies." "You don't have strategies," Ji-won replied bluntly. "You have survival tactics. That's why you're losing." She turned to So Young. "Show me your weapon systems." As So Young reluctantly led the human to the tactical stations, Taemin followed, trying to understand these strange allies. Ji-won examined their equipment with the detached interest of a scientist studying primitive tools. "These are designed for fighting other civilizations like yourselves," she observed. "Weapons built for honor and rules of engagement. They're useless against extinction-level threats." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. Ji-won looked at him directly, and he saw something in her eyes that made him step back. It wasn't hatred or anger. It was the complete absence of anything resembling mercy. The Void Swarm doesn't follow your rules. It doesn't care about your honor or your desire to minimize casualties. It wants to consume everything alive in this galaxy, and then move on to the next one. She gestured toward the tactical display showing the ongoing battle. "We fought 17 similar threats. We learned that the only way to win is to be more ruthless than they are." Through the viewing screen, Taemin watched as human marines in powered armor boarded swarm vessels. But instead of trying to capture or study their enemies, they systematically executed every living thing they found. No prisoners, no samples, no attempts at communication. Why are you killing everything? He asked. Some of those creatures might have been converted against their will. They could be saved. Jiwan's expression didn't change. No, they can't. We learned that lesson 800 years ago when we tried to save converted populations from the Devourer plague. Every survivor we spared became a new infection point. Every act of mercy gave the enemy more time to adapt and spread. The battle outside was turning in humanity's favor, but not in any way that Tae Min recognized as victory. The humans weren't defeating the swarm. They were exterminating it. Completely and without hesitation. Another human officer named Sergeant Dawoon approached with a tablet. Commander, we've identified 17 secondary infection sites throughout the system. Recommend immediate sterilization. Approved. Use fusion warheads. Tae Min felt his heart stop. Those are colony worlds. There might be survivors hiding there. If there are survivors, they're infected, Jiwan replied. The swarm doesn't leave populations alive unless they serve its purpose. Anyone still breathing on those worlds is either converted or will be soon. As he watched human ships launch nuclear weapons at planets that might still contain coalition civilians, Tae Min realized that his call for help had brought something to his galaxy that was more terrifying than the void swarm itself. These humans weren't here to save anyone. They were here to ensure that nothing survived to threaten the rest of the galaxy. And they were very, very good at their job. Captain Han Sol received the message while his ship was patrolling the outer edge of the Terra system. The Endurance was one of 47 vessels in the Deep Survey Fleet, humanity's early warning system against threats from beyond known space. Sir, we're getting a long-range transmission from outside the galaxy, reported Communications Officer Dae-yoon. It's a distress call. Han Sol had been expecting this. The deep space sensors had detected unusual energy patterns moving through distant star systems for the past 6 months. The patterns matched 17 previous incidents in humanity's long history. Another galactic civilization was dying. Play it back. The bridge crew listened in silence as Admiral Tae Min's desperate message filled the air. When it ended, Han Sol's tactical officer Wu Jin shook his head sadly. Same pattern as always, sir. They wait until the last moment to call for help. How long since they sent this? Han Sol asked. 4 days, sir. Given the distance, they're probably already dead. Engineer Bo Ram looked up from her station. Sir, should we inform Fleet Command? Han Sol was already reaching for the communication controls. This decision was above his authority level, but he knew what the answer would be. It was always the same answer. 30 minutes later, Admiral Kyung-ho's face appeared on the main screen from Earth Command. Behind him, Han Sol could see the massive war room where humanity coordinated its defense against galactic threats. Captain, we've analyzed the transmission. The void swarm pattern matches historical records from the Andromeda encounter 300 years ago. This is Priority Alpha. Understood, sir. What are our orders? Full mobilization. The 18th Fleet is being activated. You'll rendezvous with them at Jump Point 7. Admiral Kyung-ho's expression was grim. Captain, you know the drill. We're not going there to save anyone. We're going to prevent the spread. Han Sol nodded. Every human officer learned this lesson in basic training. When galactic civilizations fell to these kinds of threats, the threats always grew stronger. If they didn't stop it now, eventually it would reach human space. The Endurance began its journey to the rally point, joining other ships from across the solar system. As they traveled, Han Sol reviewed the tactical data that coalition forces had included in their message. Lieutenant So Young, the ship's intelligence officer, brought him her analysis. Sir, this void swarm is similar to the Devourer plague we faced 800 years ago, but it's evolved. It learns faster and adapts to new weapons within hours instead of days. What does that tell us about the coalition's chances? They never had any, sir. Their weapons are designed for fighting other civilizations like themselves. They're not built for fighting something that wants to consume all life in the galaxy. Han Sol walked through the ship's corridors, observing his crew as they prepared for what was coming. In the weapons bay, Chief Gunner Min-ho was calibrating the ship's arsenal. Unlike the elegant energy weapons that most galactic civilizations preferred, human ships carried brutal, efficient tools designed for one purpose. How are we looking, Chief? Min-ho grinned, but it wasn't a happy expression. Kinetic penetrators are loaded and ready. High-explosive warheads are armed. The fusion bombs are in standby mode. He patted one of the weapon systems affectionately. "These babies were designed to kill things that refuse to die, sir. If the swarm is anything like the data suggests, they're in for a surprise." In the medical bay, Dr. Yunji was setting up equipment that would have horrified the Coalition's medical officers. Combat drugs, surgical equipment designed to get wounded soldiers back into the fight, and life support systems that could keep someone alive long enough to complete their mission. "Doc, what's your assessment of Coalition physiology?" Han Solo asked. "They're not built for this kind of war, Captain. Their medical philosophy focuses on healing and recovery. Ours focuses on keeping people alive long enough to win." She held up a combat stimulant injector. "When they see what we consider normal battlefield medicine, they're going to think we're monsters." The journey to the rendezvous point took 3 days. During that time, more ships joined them from across human space. These weren't the sleek, beautiful vessels that peaceful civilizations built. They were scarred survivors of countless battles, their hulls repaired with whatever materials were available. When Han Solo saw the full fleet assembled, he felt the familiar mixture of pride and sadness that came with these deployments. Humanity had become very good at war because they'd had no choice. Every elegant impulse, every merciful instinct had been beaten out of them by millennia of facing extinction. Fleet Admiral Sang-woo's flagship, the Retribution, was a perfect example. The massive vessel had been destroyed and rebuilt so many times that no part of the original ship remained. Its hull showed the scars of battles across 17 different galactic threats. Weapons that shouldn't exist had tried to destroy it, and it was still here. "All ships, this is Admiral Sang-woo. You've all read the mission briefing. Another civilization is dying, and they've asked for our help." His voice carried the weight of too many similar missions. "We're not going there to save them. By the time we arrive, they'll probably be dead. We're going there to make sure whatever killed them doesn't spread any further." Han Solo listened as the Admiral continued. "Rules of engagement are standard for galactic extinction events. No prisoners, no mercy, no hesitation. Our job is to completely eradicate the threat, not to preserve Coalition survivors or infrastructure. Every minute we spend trying to save individuals is a minute the threat has to adapt and grow stronger." The fleet began moving toward Coalition space at maximum speed. The journey would take 2 weeks, assuming the Coalition lasted that long. Han Solo doubted they would. Specialist Jae Sung from the engineering department brought him the long-range sensor reports. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Coalition's location. It looks like they're putting up a good fight." "How good?" "They've lasted 6 days longer than the Nexari did when they faced the Crystal Plague. But the pattern is the same. Each day fewer ships are transmitting." Han Solo nodded. He'd seen this pattern before. Peaceful civilizations always fought bravely when extinction came for them, but bravery wasn't enough. You needed to be willing to become the monster to defeat the monster. As the human fleet traveled through space, leaving no trace of their passage, Han Solo made his final preparations. Whatever they found at their destination, it would end the same way it always did. Completely and permanently, the Coalition had asked for allies. What they were getting instead was humanity's solution to galactic extinction events. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't merciful, and it definitely wasn't what they expected. But it worked. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, watching the last defense fleet of New Kepler prepare for what everyone knew would be their final battle. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see the dark shapes moving between the stars. The Void Swarm had arrived. "Sir, we have 17 ships left in fighting condition," reported his tactical officer So Young, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "The Nexari crystal ships are holding the left flank, but their shields are down to 30%. Taemin nodded grimly. 3 months ago, they had commanded over 800 vessels from 12 different species. Now, barely 24 remained. The swarm consumed everything in its path, turning ships and crews into twisted versions of themselves, adding their strength to the endless dark tide. The communication panel lit up with desperate messages from across the system. Colony ships were trying to evacuate civilians while merchant vessels attempted to flee toward the outer rim. Everyone knew it was pointless. The swarm was faster, and it never stopped hunting. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Luminal command ship," announced Communications Officer Hee Jin. The Luminals were beings of pure energy who had existed for millions of years. If they were frightened, Everyone should be. The bridge filled with the soft musical voice of High Commander Velmar. Coalition forces, our energy matrices are failing. The swarm has learned to absorb our life force directly. We estimate 40 minutes before complete dissolution. So Young's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. Sir, the collective hive mind ships report similar problems. The swarm is adapting faster than our defenses can compensate. Taemin had seen this pattern before, on 17 other worlds. The Void Swarm arrived, studied their prey, then systematically destroyed every form of resistance. What made it worse was that the swarm learned from each victory, becoming stronger and more efficient with every civilization it consumed. A young officer named Junho ran onto the bridge carrying a datapad. Admiral, Commander Wu Jin from the Research Division says he found something. He needs to speak with you immediately. Taemin looked at the tactical display one more time. Red warning lights showed swarm forces breaking through their defensive lines in 3 sectors. Put him through. Commander Wu Jin appeared on the main screen. His usually calm Nexari features showed signs of excitement and fear. Admiral, I've been searching through the old archives looking for anything that might help us. I found references to something called the Terra system. Never heard of it, Taemin replied. Is it a weapons cache? A hidden base? That's just it, sir. The records are incomplete, but what I found suggests it was marked as a quarantine zone over 3,000 years ago. The notation says survivors of the Great Filter, and then everything else is classified or deleted. So Young frowned at her displays. Sir, swarm forces have broken through Sector 7. The mining platform there is gone. Taemin ignored the bad news for a moment and focused on Wu Jin. What's this Great Filter you mentioned? I'm not sure, Admiral, but the few fragments I found suggest that whatever lived in the Terra system faced something called extinction events. Multiple ones, and somehow survived them all. The bridge shook as enemy fire struck their shields. Warning alarms began to sound, and Heejin reported that 2 more coalition ships had been destroyed. The defensive line was collapsing faster than expected. Sir, Junho said quietly, maybe they could help us, if they survived extinction events before. Taemin wanted to dismiss the idea. His entire military training told him to focus on the battle in front of him, not chase after myths and legends. But as he watched another coalition ship disappear in a ball of dark energy, he realized they had nothing left to lose. Wu Jin, do you have coordinates for this Terra system? Yes, sir, but it's marked as quarantined. The navigation computers won't even plot a course there without override codes. Override them. Use my command authority. Taemin turned to Heejin. Prepare a long-range transmission. Full power, all frequencies. So Young looked up from her tactical display. Sir, that will drain our shields by 20%. If the swarm attacks while we're transmitting. They're attacking anyway, Taemin replied. At least this way we might accomplish something before we die. The next few minutes felt like hours. The communications array charged up, while coalition ships fought desperately to buy them time. 3 more vessels were lost, including one of the ancient Nexari crystal ships that had protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. Ready to transmit, Admiral, Heejin reported. Taemin thought about what to say. How do you ask for help from strangers who might not even exist? How do you explain that an entire galactic civilization was about to die? Open channel. The bridge fell silent, except for the distant sounds of battle. Taemin looked at the camera and spoke as clearly as he could. This is Admiral Taemin of the Galactic Coalition Defense Force. We are transmitting from the new Kepler system. Our civilization is under attack by a force we call the Void Swarm. They have consumed most of our galaxy and are systematically destroying all intelligent life. He paused as another explosion shook the ship. We have tried everything we know. Our weapons are useless, our shields fail, and our people are dying. According to our records, you have survived something called the Great Filter. We don't know what that means, but we're hoping it means you understand what we're facing. The tactical display showed more red warnings. They were down to 11 ships now. We are not asking you to die for us. We're asking if you know how to fight something like this. Anything you can tell us might save what's left of our people. This may be our last transmission. Taemin gestured to Heejin, who added the coalition's historical records, tactical data about the swarm, and coordinates for their major population centers to the message. "Message sent, sir," she reported. "Long-range transmitters are overheated. We won't be able to send another signal like that for at least 6 hours." "We won't be alive in 6 hours," So Young said matter-of-factly. "Swarm forces are moving to surround us. They'll have us trapped in 30 minutes. Taemin nodded and returned his attention to the battle. He had done everything he could think of. If there really was a civilization in the Terra system, and if they received the message, and if they decided to help, maybe some part of the galaxy could be saved. But as he watched the void swarm's dark shapes moving through space like hungry shadows, Admiral Taemin prepared for the end of everything he had ever known. The message was sent, but help seemed impossible. In the Terra system, something very old and very dangerous began to wake up.